We're looking forward to an amazing 2 days. Like Mike said, we want to make sure that you have time to network with your peers. There are a lot of people here today that you can learn from. And of course, we want to make sure you have fun. I find that people learn much more when they're having fun, they're having a good time, and that's what we're going to try to do over the next couple of days. Now, normally I talk about the future, but the future is already here. So today what I really want to talk about is the road ahead. What's around the corner? What's coming up next? What's about to happen, or in some cases, has already occurred. And we all know we live in a very connected world. Between the speed and availability of planes taking us all over the world, to today video conferencing, telecom, the internet, we're in a world where boundaries really don't separate us anymore. But we also live in a world that is being devoured by software. We don't always think of it as software, but software is taking over every aspect of our lives, from how we shop, to how we get transport, to how we communicate, to how we entertain. Technology and software is taking over every aspect of what we do. And it's impacting every aspect of how we work. And so businesses today have to embrace the changes that are happening if they want to stay relevant. It's not just limited to businesses. It's true for governments, for nonprofits, for any organization that's trying to operate in today's world. You have to accept technology and change as part of what you're doing. But the reality is that the pace of technological change is increasing. And it's increasing at a faster and faster rate. So not only is there more and more technology, but the pace of change is shortening. The time, the half-life of products, of services that we get used to is changing constantly. And so individuals are having a hard time keeping up. I mean, just for anybody that's got kids, you know that your kids probably know how to do things that you don't know how to do with your phone. I mean, yesterday, I was FaceTiming with my daughter, and she started changing the way she looked. She was throwing these avatars at me. I had no idea what she was doing. And this is just the way it works. And that's individuals. When you start thinking about businesses, businesses are even further behind. And there's no point in talking about the public sector, right? Governments are even further behind this pace of technological change. So what's the impact of this? Well, it really translates to a lack of skills development, right? The skills that we are acquiring are not keeping pace with the technology that we're acquiring. In other words, we are learning things for our jobs that might not even be relevant for the jobs we're about to do, because the pace of change is happening so quickly. And missing skills is very expensive for a corporation, or really any organization. All right, this is looking at the cost per employee, but the reality is the costs are much higher. Because if you think about it, it's not just the cost of that employee not having a skill and needing to find somebody else that has that skill. It's also the cost of lost productivity and the opportunity cost. Right, we all know about the 10x employee, somebody that can do the work literally 10 times faster or be 10 times more productive than another employee. And it sounds like fantasy, but at the end of the day, it's really about skills, right? If you have an employee that's highly skilled, that employee with their skills, with their experience, is able to outperform their peers many times over. So the numbers can get astronomical. And CEOs understand this. CEOs understand that they have to reskill their workforce. There's simply not an ability to continue to compete if you don't have the skills required for today's competition. But the inverse is also true, right? Organizations that don't have the skills can't compete. And we've seen that with many organizations very recently. There have been many, many bankruptcies, many organizations that have not been able to perform in today's world because the change has happened too quickly for them. They're not able to keep pace. They're not able to reskill their workforce. And most CEOs, while understanding that they need to reskill their workforce, don't necessarily believe that their company has done it. Now, if we take a step back and we think more broadly about how organizations are successful, at the end of the day, it's the strategy and the people that make an organization successful. And it's the innovation that those people provide. But there are multiple things that hold an organization back, even if they have a great strategy, even if they have some great people. If an organization isn't able to stay compliant, if an organization is not able to have the skills that they need in the workforce, if an organization, even with a compliant organization that has the right skills, doesn't retain the right people, doesn't engage the right people to be productive, those organizations are not going to be successful. So what I want to talk about today really is how can Cornerstone help you solve these challenges? What's the impact of these things, and how do we help you solve these potential roadblocks that can prevent you from being successful? Now, the first is compliance. Compliance can get very expensive. So this were the fines that were applied to European companies in 2017. It's a lot of money. But it's not limited to that cost, right? That's the actual fines that were levied against the companies. That doesn't include the distraction that was caused by whatever the compliance incident was, and the interrogations and the back and forth with the regulators trying to absolve themselves of the fines that they ultimately received. Or more importantly, it doesn't take into account reputational risk. We need to look no further than VW to understand what the impact is of reputational risk if you're non-compliant. So how do we help you stay compliant? Well, for one, we're able to help you understand where you need to be compliant. We're able to help you ensure that the compliance activities that you have are working, and they're working at scale. We want to make sure, to the extent you get audited, like many of our life sciences clients, we can help you be audit ready. We want to make sure that if you have compliance efforts that are all over the organization globally, we can help you centralize that. We can help you report on that. We can help you manage certification processes or designations. We can help you leverage the compliance efforts that you already have in place. And we think about this really as a hierarchy of needs, right? At the end of the day, what you're trying to do is ensure that the right people get the right version of the right training at the right time, and that you can do this at scale. It's easy to do for 5 people or 10 people, harder to do for 5 or 10,000, much harder for 50,000 or 100,000 people. But we can help you with that. We can help you do it at scale. And we can help you work your way up from a focus on training delivery and record keeping to true learning experience, help drive an effective learning and development program. And we do this with a variety of tools, right? Tools that help you with the assignment of the compliance training, to ensure that the right people are getting trained without having to individually ensure that every person got the training they need, but rather do it based on criteria or groups of people that need to be trained and people coming in and out of those groups, by ensuring that you're getting the right reporting so that managers understand where there are gaps in compliance and can take action on it, and even go a step beyond, leveraging analytics, leveraging big data and machine learning to start to make predictions about where there might be gaps in compliance so that you can proactively avoid compliance issues, avoid those fines, and avoid that reputational risk. But in some ways, that's the easy stuff. Right? Compliance tends to be binary. You're either compliant or you're not. When you talk about skills, it's much more of a gray area. Because a lot of people have skills, right? Everybody has some skills. Everybody is competent in certain areas. But do you have the right level of competence for what you need to compete right now? And this is an evolving area, right? It's something that's constantly changing. And why is that? Because every aspect of work is changing. If we think about virtually any industry at all, over the last 10 years, and certainly over the last 5 years, it's become highly disrupted. It doesn't matter what industry we're talking about. We often think about retail, right? Everybody's always talking about the stores, the malls. I found it very odd walking around O2 yesterday that they've built this enormous mall right here, right at the same time that in other parts of the world, 25% of all malls are closing. In the Americas, 25% of all of the malls are closing right now. Why is that? Because of technology, right? Because of e-commerce. People are ordering things at home, and it's become very difficult for retail outlets that have not adopted and dealt with, adopted technology and adapted their businesses to deal with these changes to survive. It's just very difficult. But it goes way beyond retail. If you think about financial services, what is the ultimate impact of Bitcoin and blockchain on the way we bank today? The way we insure today? Nobody knows. Nobody is actually sure what the impact's going to be. A lot of the banks are starting to make investments in this area, but they're just not sure. In the same way, educational institutions are just not exactly sure what the ultimate impact of online education is going to be on their institutions. Right? There have been lots of experiments, but everybody knows that things will change. They're not sure how, but they know that they're going to change. So you have many, many institutions of higher education working on how they move things online, being prepared, starting to experiment, ensuring that their professors understand what's going to happen so that they're prepared for the future. Manufacturing being disrupted, not so much by VR, but by AR, right? By automation, by robotics, all impacting all of these various industries. And it's not limited to any one industry. Take sports, for example. The way sports work today as a business is completely different than it used to be. Statistics, big data has taken over sporting. Science and medicine, the way people train, the way people operate is completely different than the way they used to do it. Why? Because we have more knowledge, we have more information, we have better technology that makes it easier to compete. And if you don't do it, you get left behind. And as a result, not only is every industry being affected, but every job is being affected. Right? What you need to know to do your job today is certainly going to be different 5 years from now. Certainly. Now, 20 years ago, nobody ever talked about that, right? If you were in your job for 5 more years, you were going to be better at your job, not worse at your job. But today, if you look at almost any job function, it's been impacted by technology. One of my favorite functions to think about is marketing, right? If you think about the way companies marketed 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, it is completely different than the way you market today. I was talking to one of our system integration partners, one of the largest consulting firms in the world, and they had an enormous marketing practice where they would go in and consult with companies on how to do marketing and how to be effective at marketing. Well, what they told me is over the last year, they have dramatically cut that marketing department, which was an enormous team within this consulting firm. Why did they cut them? Because they found that their consultants, many of them who had worked for decades in marketing, were not relevant to their clients anymore. Why weren't they relevant? They had 20, 30, 40 years of marketing experience. They weren't relevant because the way companies were marketing today was completely different than even 5 years ago. And the consultants simply didn't know how to market in a world of social media and pull marketing. Or think about this. 1 out of 3 jobs over the next several years don't even exist today. Right? What you need to know, what you're going to school for, what you've been studying to get one of those jobs might be completely irrelevant. We don't even know what the jobs are. So to say that people have been trained properly for those jobs is highly unlikely. And this is not a small percentage. It's over 30% of future jobs don't even exist today. So this means we have to deal with technology because technology has changed every aspect of our lives, of our companies, of our jobs. And so how do we do it? How do we deal with the fact that companies are dependent on people to solve problems, right? Problems today, but maybe more importantly, problems tomorrow. That's how organizations compete. But if you don't have people with the right skills, they're not capable of competing. Now, this has become very apparent when you think about the labor force, because we now live in a tale of two labor forces that are extremely different from one another. On the one side, you have skilled workers. These are people who have adapted. They're people that understand the latest and greatest things. They have the skills that people need for these forward-looking jobs. And these jobs require high levels of skill. And most of us think about engineering jobs or developers when we think about this, but it goes far beyond that. These are highly skilled jobs. The reality is there are many, many more of these highly skilled jobs than there are people that can fill those jobs. And that's true in any geography, anywhere in the world. On the other side of the equation, on the other side of the skills divide, you have the opposite. You have relatively few unskilled jobs, but many, many people that can fill those jobs. And the problem is that the number of those unskilled jobs is actually rapidly declining. It's not going up, it's going down. And why is that? Well, we know why. It's because of automation, it's because of robotics, it's because of technology. But people ask, well, if there are so many unskilled laborers and so few unskilled jobs, why is it that unemployment generally is so low right now? Because it's counterintuitive. Well, the answer is the gig economy, right? The gig economy which are part-time jobs that are available to people, often involving driving, right? It could be driving people, it could be driving packages, but some sort of transportation of something. Those jobs have exploded. And so what you have today are a lot of underemployed people. They have a job, but it's not the job they wanted. It's not the job they trained for. It's not the job they used to have. And with the eventuality of autonomous vehicles, most of those gig economy jobs will go away. So sooner or later, this is going to become a major social problem. You don't believe me? Think about the construction industry, right? Now, to be fair, I don't know if you've ever done carpentry. I would not necessarily consider these people unskilled, but there are a lot of people that have worked in the construction field. What about the jobs for them, for mechanics? Well, in Europe, there are 12 million construction workers, but there's only 350,000 construction jobs. Think about that. I'll do the math for you. 36 times more people than there are jobs. That is a big, big number. That's just one slice of one industry. This is true across many, many industries. If you think about the flip side of that, right? What's the issue for all of you, for people in HR that are recruiting these people? Well, recruiters are overwhelmed for these kinds of positions because on average, a recruiter will take 40 open job recs, and on average, there's about 250 applicants per job. So that means a recruiter is expected to handle 10,000 applicants. That's hard to do. Here's a real example. A German manufacturer at one of their warehouses had 800 jobs. They had just opened a new warehouse. So they announced the opening of this warehouse. 10,000 people came to apply for their jobs. I don't actually think it was these people. I think these people were waiting on a food line during World War II, but only 15% of the people had the reading, writing, and math skills to do the job. So this was very unskilled labor, right? This was the reading, writing, and math skills to have a job at a warehouse. And that's the workforce, right? So imagine the recruiters dealing with those 10,000 applicants for those 800 jobs. So the challenge is similar to finding a needle in a haystack, right? How do you identify the people that are most capable to do those jobs when you have such a sea of people out there applying for those jobs? How do you determine, in some cases where it's not skills you're looking for or particular experiences, but maybe the likelihood of retention, right? How do you find the people if you're in an organization that's dealing with high levels of attrition? How do you find the people that are likely to stay, that aren't going to leave after 3 or 6 months? It's difficult to do. Then there's the other side of the equation, right? The skilled jobs where there are effectively very few people able to take those skilled jobs. You know, in Europe, there are 4 in 10 employers having a very difficult time finding those people. It's the exact opposite problem, right? It used to be, you had a job, you posted it in the newspaper, people would come and fill those jobs. Obviously, that's not the way we do it today, right? Today, there are many, 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 many different ways to recruit people. Social media, job boards, websites, events, job fairs. So many different ways to touch a potential candidate, to try to find that candidate. We had a big debate internally about what the right number was here. So if you have a highly skilled worker, how many times do they get solicited? I'll give you the real stat. The real stat's 32 times per week. Nobody believed it, but we all believe that it's more than once a workday. Every day of the year. Every single day of the year, highly skilled workers are being asked to change jobs. They're being solicited for an open position. Why? There's simply not enough people with the skills to fill those jobs. And this is not a problem in one place. It's a problem everywhere. You know, we work with a very, very large tech company, and they have an insatiable appetite for engineers. In fact, their appetite is so big that they have calculated that there are not enough graduates in the world with engineering degrees to fill all the open positions they have. So even if they were to hire every single engineering graduate in the world, it would not fill their open positions based on their headcount plan over the next 5 years. So they recognize that they have to be very, very aggressive looking for people. And so how do you stand out? How do you stand out when you're trying to find these people? Well, we think about it as a similar issue on both sides, right? In both cases, you have to attract people. Obviously, much more important when you're talking about the skilled workers. You have to select people. That's harder when you're talking about the unskilled workers. You have to hire them and onboard them effectively, right? It's just a reality of how we add people to our organizations. And we're trying to help you with both sides of the skills divide. So with Cornerstone Recruiting, when we're talking about unskilled workers or entry-level positions or frontline employees, we think about the hiring pipeline. And we think about the ease in which your recruiters are able to identify the right people to move through the process. And ideally, using automation to automate part of that process so you could more quickly move the right people through the hiring process. And then, once you've moved them through the process, be able to make the offers to the right people in a streamlined fashion, making it easier to get through those 10,000 applicants that they have to review. On the other side of the equation, you want to make sure that you're able to source people effectively, that you're able to communicate effectively, that you're able to interact with the candidate who might not yet be an applicant. They might still be considering whether or not they want to work with you. And so, tighter linkage between Cornerstone and LinkedIn, which was just released, helps with that. Communication tools, part of Cornerstone Recruiting, help with that. And of course, having a positive candidate experience is incredibly important, right? Remember, these people are solicited once a day, at least. So if you get them to look at your career site, you really have one shot to get them interested. And so it better work on a phone, because at least half the time they're looking at your career site, they're responding to your email from their phone. And you want something that's consumerized, right? We all know what good looks like at this point. We all know what a pretty website looks like, or an elegant mobile app. So your career site has to reinforce your brand, but has to do it with consumerized standards. And we'll let you do that today. And mobile matters. Your conversion rate is actually over 50% higher if you have a mobile-friendly candidate experience. And that's true, by the way, both for the highly skilled workers and for the lower skilled workers. Just think about it. If you're applying to a retail store, you're much more likely to be applying from your phone versus somebody who is applying to be your next CFO, who's more likely to apply from a computer. But that CFO candidate or that engineer has been solicited so many times that they're more likely to look at your career site from their phone. And so either way, the mobile experience matters. And so we're trying to help you in several different ways to deal with this candidate experience, to deal with the recruiting life cycle. But like I said, for this one company, even if they were to hire all the engineers that were out there, it's not enough. And because it's so competitive to hire those skilled workers, you can't just recruit your way out of the problem. If your company already is missing some of these people, which it most likely is, and if you don't think they are, then you haven't done your homework, because virtually every organization is short on these highly skilled workers. You know, Cornerstone now has 6 different development centers around the world. Why? To have talent pools all over the world, so we can draw from people from different geographies that are in different talent pools with different competitive sets of other companies trying to recruit these people. The reality is you can't recruit your way out of it. There aren't enough candidates out there. You have to keep learning. Whether you're the corporation training your employee or you're the worker trying to stay relevant, either way, learning can't be a one-time thing. You have to keep learning. And it's funny, when I started the company, people didn't think this way. Learning was a one-time thing. You got your new job, you got trained at the job, that was it. Got trained once. That doesn't work anymore. The skills required are moving, and so you have to keep training. And that training often has to involve deeper specialization, because these higher skilled jobs have gotten more complex. And as a result, people need to be more specialized. The reality is the next industrial revolution has already arrived. What do I mean by that? Well, we're on our 4th industrial revolution at this point. We've gone through the initial one when we first had power. You start to have mechanization. Then, of course, with the advent of electricity and the assembly line, you had what we generally think of as the Industrial Revolution. That was followed, of course, by the computer revolution, when we started to automate many of the things that we did, when computers found their way into the workplace. But today we have a different one. Today it's about data. It's about data being leveraged, being captured, collected, computed, and orchestrated to give us artificial intelligence, which allows us to do things that we were never able to do before, that allows the machines to do what used to be the work of humans. And developing new skills is obviously critical in this area. We like to say that skills have become the new digital currency, right? It's the way that people have value today. It's what skills do they have? How highly skilled are they? And you see this in this disparity of pay rates, right? Which we all have seen in the press over the years. It's becoming more and more severe. Why? Because of the skills divide. And businesses get this because the results are very, very clear, right? Organizations that have more effective learning programs are more productive, they retain their people better, they're more profitable. It's all good. And the employees understand this, right? High performers want to work at companies that are going to keep developing them. Employees understand that their career path is not the same as it used to be. You don't just go straight up anymore. And so they want to keep learning. And the new generation of workers understands this very innately. And the way they express this is by leaving. If an organization is not developing them, if they feel like there aren't career development opportunities and there's not availability of continuous training, they're going to go somewhere else because they know that some organizations get this and some don't. We think there's a way to solve this problem. We like to call this a 5 for 20 challenge. And I encourage all of you to take this challenge. Take 5% of your employees' time, and we believe it will lower attrition by 20%. What does that translate to? If you have 10,000 employees, it translates to about $10 million. Now, this number could be much higher because it doesn't take into account the productivity you get from all the other people who weren't at risk of churning. Now, what's 5%? 5% is actually 1 workday a month. It's not that big an investment, right? You could spread that out over the course of the month, or you could do what we do internally. We have a development day once a month. And during that development day, the responsibility of the managers is to allow all the employees to learn that day. Everybody is free to learn whatever they want. We host a number of events. We've done thousands of hours of training across all these events. You can do it online, in a classroom, virtual classroom, but it works. It works. 5 for 20. 5% of your time training your employees. In return, 20% reduction in turnover. Now, that's one way we can help you, just giving you that idea, but the other way we really help you is with our tools. And when we think about this need for lifelong learning, we think about it from the perspective of a holistic solution, right? Because we understand that training large organizations is very difficult, particularly if it's a multinational. You need to have lots of learning management capabilities to be able to do that, because you have to get the right training to the right people at the right time. But in this new world, you also need to think about elective training, right? The training that the employees want to take, not necessarily for their current job, but maybe for the next job in your organization. And to do it well, we realize that we have to help you also with the content. You can't be expected to curate exactly the right content for all your employees across a number of different disciplines when the skills and competencies required keep changing. So we're trying to help in all of these areas. We think first, learning management needs to be simple even though it's complicated, right? Even though there's a lot of power behind it, we want to make it easy for you to get the right training to the right people, to ensure that the assignments are going to the right places and that people are actually finishing the training they're supposed to take. On the flip side, we want to make sure that your employees have a state-of-the-art learning experience. We've all gotten accustomed to subscription services at home in how we watch video. Netflix has become the standard, copied by the likes of Hulu and Amazon and others who have created services that look a lot like this, right? We copy them too, because that is the consumer standard. And it's got to work on your PC. It's also got to work on your phone or your tablet. And it's got to involve training that both is the proprietary training of your organization, the third-party training you've purchased, but also the open source training that's out there in the world. YouTube and SlideShare and lots of other interesting content that's out there on the web. All of that becomes part of the learner's experience. But there's also the need to have curated content, to have the actual training to meet these ever-evolving skills and competency requirements. So we've come up with what we call Cornerstone Content Anytime. It's a collection of content served up as a subscription service. It's constantly updated, always modern, mobile ready, across a variety of providers and a variety of topics. And we started with Content Anytime Essentials. In Europe, obviously, we focus on the multi-language edition. And it involves a range of subjects in a range of titles across multiple providers. And what we've tried to do is find the best of everything out there and bring it right to you. We keep it updated. It's fully integrated with the system, and it's an all-you-can-eat subscription service. The same way you consume entertainment at home now, whether you're talking about audio or video. And it's worked, and so we're doubling down on this concept. And we're building out a number of subscriptions that are more specialized by industry, by job function, by theme, or by region. The way it works is fairly straightforward. You would identify your core subscription, a multi-language essentials package, or a regional specific set of content. And then you can layer on top of it specialized subscriptions based on theme or function that might only be for a subset of your population, even though the base package is for everybody. And that's it. You start learning. Now, when we think about themes, the most important theme in Europe, without a doubt, is digital transformation. And so we've created Content Anytime for digital transformation. It's highly curated, teaching organizations about everything from how to innovate to how to do modern product design to how to work in a world of digital transformation, machine learning. We've also built out, based on demand, regional subscriptions. We've done one in Spanish. We've done one in German. And we've done one in French. These are all available now. So we've been working on this for a while. It's enabled us to bring you exactly what you need. Modern content, works on your phone or your tablet or your computer, and that covers a range of topics and is constantly curated. We also, last week, announced our acquisition of Grovo. Why'd we do it? Well, Grovo is one of the world's top micro-learning providers. In fact, Grovo coined the phrase micro-learning. And Grovo provides world-class content across, they have 2,500 titles today that allow us to be highly prescriptive in our subscriptions. So that's why we did it. We wanted to have the ability to supplement the great content that we have already with highly specialized content that makes those subscriptions even more exclusive, even more relevant. And that's exactly what we're able to do today. So we think we've really come up with a way to help you on the skill side. We also can help you with the third challenge. The third challenge is engagement. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say you're compliant. Let's say you've recruited the right people and you've kept developing them. You can't stop there. You have to make sure you're retaining the people. And the reality is, your top people are the ones that are going to help you to transform. And your top people are probably the ones that are the most adaptable. Because at the end of the day, what makes individuals successful and what's going to make companies successful is this ability to adapt. Because the world is moving faster and faster now. All brought about by this pace of technological change. And so having the ability to adapt is incredibly important. And your people are critical to that. But your people are only going to adapt if they're engaged. And the problem is, the vast majority of employees today are not engaged. This is studies that were done. There are many different studies. This one happens to be a Mercer study. There are many different studies that have been done all over the world about engagement. And what they find over and over again is the vast majority of employees are not engaged in their job. That's why they're looking at those solicitations that they're getting every day. To keep employees engaged, you got to manage their careers. You got to invest in employee engagement because it pays off. Right? It pays off in higher revenue, higher profitability, but we can see this on our own teams, right? You don't need statistics for this. If you're in the office, look around. You know the employees that are engaged, and you know the employees that aren't. Even on your own team. And you know that the employees that are engaged are just much more productive. Not only do they actually put in more time to their job, but they're more focused and they're more effective. Now, why aren't a lot of employees engaged? A lot of employees aren't engaged, in part because they're not getting the development they need, but even if they are, their careers are not being properly managed. Almost all employees, including probably all of you, want some kind of career growth, some kind of career development opportunity. And the reality is we no longer have corporate ladders. The idea of a corporate ladder historically was I start in a job, then over time I move my way up in that job, in that division, in that department, on that team. I work my way up. And people would retire, and that opens the next rung in the ladder for the next person down, and that cascades down, so everybody kind of moves up the ladder. And so tenure was the biggest determinant of promotability. And people just worked their way up, right? The job didn't change much. Skills needed for the job didn't change much. And there was sort of this regular cadence of retirement. None of that is true anymore, right? People are working much longer than they used to. The job is dynamically changing. The skills required for the job keep evolving. And so this idea of the corporate ladder is all but dead. What people are much more interested in now is the career wall, or some people call it the career lattice. This idea that I can move up, I can move down, I can move left or right, but there's mobility. I have the ability to move. We've all heard about millennials expected to have 5 or 7 careers in their lifetime. Careers, not jobs. Right? That means different professions, or at minimum, different departments in your organization. And the reality is most companies aren't well equipped for this. They're not good at managing careers and continuing to develop employees. Well, we want to help you with this. We want to help enable talent mobility. So one of the things we're hard at work on is the Career Center. The Career Center, which is coming out soon, is going to enable your employees to understand very simply what other job opportunities are available to them. We're going to also help employees understand what is that path to advancement. What are all of their career options? Now, we've had this kind of capability in the system for a long time, but it required the HR team to enter all the possible permutations from one job to another, all the career paths available in the organization. Well, the reality is after you get past about 100 different jobs, it's virtually impossible to do this, and many of you have thousands of different jobs in your organizations. So we rely on the machine to do this. It's all based on big data. It's based on leveraging machine learning to understand not only what are all the career paths available to people, but what are the expected time frames in that career path? What is the expected likelihood of being able to be successful on that career path? And what are the missing skills or competencies and requisite training to be effective there? And because of all that, we're able to even recommend to an employee, if there are potentially hundreds of jobs available to them, which are the 2 or 3 that maybe are the most pertinent for them to look at. We also recognize that employees want to be recognized, right? Employees get motivated by recognition. And it doesn't take statistics to figure this out. We all know that managers aren't the only people that give feedback. And in fact, a lot of employees prefer to get feedback from their peers than from their managers. So you really need a balanced approach to how you're managing performance. It can't just be about measurement and transactions. It's not just about compensatory reviews. It's also about managing people to help with their development, to help them manage their career and their experience. And so we've been working on enabling you to measure performance through the lens of career development and employee development. And so that includes feedback, not just from the manager to the employee, but from all employees to the employee. It includes the idea of recognition of high performers and tying pay to performance, so that if you are a high performer, you're getting compensated for it. And we recognize that you need to have the right data to be effective at doing this, right? To be effective at understanding who needs to be motivated, where you need better engagement, what employees are ready to move in their career. The problem is, most organizations aren't confident in their data at all. And most organizations aren't able to get any useful information or analytics out of the data they have, in part because the data wasn't accurate in the first place. And in part because they don't have the right tools to learn from that data. And so they don't know who the 1 in 4 people are in the organization that have high retention risk, right? Who are that 25% of the organization that you need to address? So we want to help with this. We believe Cornerstone HR can help you understand your data better, help you get the right data in the first place, so your organizational records, your employee records are correct, so that you're able to proactively understand who are your top performers, who are your highest potential people, and who are the ones at risk. Why are they at risk? Are their compa ratios off? Are they stuck in the same position for too long? Have they dealt with too many different managers over a short period of time? How do you make smarter decisions about where you need to invest? Where are the open opportunities, not today, but a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? And where should you be trying to guide people towards? All of that makes you more effective. Having a global view of the organization and the data that you have help you better understand your people. And so at the end of the day, we believe that the Cornerstone platform can help you with all these challenges, help you be more compliant, help you be more effective, help you get the right skills to the right people, and help keep those people engaged. But it's not just about the platform. It's also about the experience that you have as a client. And we want to make sure that we're investing in your success. We know that client success is incredibly important. It's what built our business. It's been our #1 priority from the beginning, to make sure that you are successful. And so when we think about support, we want to make sure that we're getting you better support tools, faster response time, that we're helping you optimize case management so that you get the help you need when you need it. And so we've rolled out a new concept in our client success organization on our global support teams to move to a work stream-based model based on the type of case that you have, making sure that if there's an issue with the system, that gets routed quickly through our engineering organization. If you have a project that you need done, we're able to service that project. If you need some specialist advice on localization or CFS or some other specific need in the networking area, we can help. And that if you have a question, we have the right people, the right corner coach to help you answer that question. To make this easier, we've started deploying new tools, a brand new system for intelligent case routing and an intelligent phone system. We've also just started deploying a brand new support community through the Service Cloud, all of which is going to make this more effective. We've also rolled out client success packages to help you be more effective in what you're trying to do and help us be more effective in how we're interacting with you. So you're getting the right levels of client success that you need depending on where you are in the client lifecycle and depending on what your particular challenges are. We want to ensure that you're successful. It's our top priority. And we want to make sure that we continue to innovate. We want to maintain our market leadership. We do not take it for granted. We have a larger product development organization than we've ever had. Our learning team is larger than it's ever been. And we're making investments all around the world to ensure that we have state-of-the-art tools for recruiting, for performance, for HR, and for training and development. And we keep ensuring that we have global reach. Some of you started working with us when we were much, much smaller, when you were taking a risk, when we had first gotten to Europe. Today, it's no longer the case. We are truly a global organization. We have direct sales and service operations in 25 countries. We have our system today in 43 languages. The system's in use in 192 countries. And so we're here to help you. But we've also been investing very heavily, specifically in Europe. And we want to talk more about what we've done here. We also want to help you understand how our clients have been able to overcome some of these challenges leveraging Cornerstone, because we believe, and this is going to be true for the next 2 days, that you learn best when you're able to learn from your peers.